Hi, I'm Tim. Join me in this video as we go through an important update to FAA Part 107 rules regarding commercial operators for drones and RC model aircraft. The highlights are flying over people, flying over at night, but there's 7 other areas that are important to remote pilots that I'll go over. Let's get to it. The FAA, in its role for providing safety in the national airspace system, began taking a very close look at the operations of small unmanned aircraft, which includes drones and radio control model aircraft. They're both considered small aircraft. And they published their first rule in June of 2016, which is under Part 107 of the FAA rules. This regards operations of people that make money or considered commercial operators of drones. That initial rule was rolled out, but the idea of the FAA was always to provide incremental changes to that as they gained more knowledge on these operations and what made sense. So this is what happened on April 21st, 2021. Just a few days ago, with an update to this original rule that changed the rules, the regulations on 7 areas of operating drones under Part 107 commercial operations. The focus is operations over people and flying at night, but it includes other areas. Before we go into just a quick overview of the 7 areas, I want to emphasize, as I will throughout this video, this information, this regulation changes affects only Part 107 operators, people operating their drones to make money as a business or not in a recreational use of the drones. The recreational use of the drones right now is you just fly for fun. You don't do it to benefit yourself or anybody else. Part 107 operators would fly, perhaps you have a business with drones. You may have a YouTube channel where you make money off of ads on your YouTube channel. Anything you do with your drone or RC model that may help somebody else, perhaps taking pictures of your high school, that would be covered under Part 107. So again, what I'm describing is Part 107 only. Now, the FAA has a very complete website with this information. And when you're reading things on the FAA website for unmanned aerial systems, you may wonder, well, is this Part 107 or recreation? Let me show you very quickly from the website how you can tell by the tree where you're getting to that section of the website whether you're a Part 107 or a recreational flyer. Let's take a look at the website now. This is a view of the FAA's homepage. You can see this green square, that's Unmanned Aircraft Systems Operation. The highlighted blue box is the latest update, which is the update on flying over people. So we can click on that, and it takes us to Operations Over People General Overview. That's just the nickname for it. So there's good discussion, what the rule is, why it's needed, background, and at the top you can see Unmanned Systems, Certificated Operations. The Certificate Operations, that's your key that this is a Part 107 and not applicable to recreational drone pilots. So the 7 areas that were changed, updated on the Part 107 regulation on April 21st, 2021 are the FAA for the first time has come up with 4 categories of drones or RC model aircraft. The FAA discusses night flight for the commercial operations, operations over people, operations over moving vehicles. The assumption is people are in the moving vehicles. A very important update on the remote pilot knowledge tests that will be a good deal for everybody flying 107. Inspection, testing, and demonstration of compliance of your drone. And then finally, design and production rules for these for manufacturers. Let's first talk about this very new thing, the 4 categories of unmanned aircraft systems. And I do have available an executive summary in this final rule of operations over people, night flying. I have a link for it in the demonstration, but it's easy to get off the FAA website. So what the FAA is doing is they're trying to come up with a way of defining a unmanned aircraft system on how much danger it could be if something goes wrong and it were to fall on, hit, possibly injure somebody on the ground. Again, the overall focus of the FAA. And what the FAA has done is they've come up with 4 categories, categories 1 through 4, category 1 being the smallest, 4 being the biggest. So we'll briefly go over these. We'll see more definition and understanding of this as these rules are digested. Remember, I'm filming this in April of 2021. We'll see more of this coming in. So the first one is Category 1. Category 1 is the smallest and lightest, and is the only one of the 4 categories that has a weight included. And to be a Category 1 drone, your entire drone has to weigh less than 0.55 pounds. That is 8.8 ounces. And what you have to do is, that's everything on the drone. And what has to happen is this drone for Category 1 may contain no exposed rotating parts that would lacerate human skin. And you don't need any FAA means of compliance or declaration of compliance. So the idea is these drones are small enough you could put a shroud around the rotating propeller. They're not going to hurt anybody if they inadvertently fall on them, just because they're so small. And that'll be pretty easy to make. And remember, for general operations, you don't need any sort of remote ID. That's Category 1. Category 2 is the next step up. And what it says from the FAA, the small unmanned craft must not cause injury to a human being that is equivalent to or greater than the severity of injury caused by a transfer of 11 foot-pounds of kinetic energy upon impact from a rigid object, and no exposed rotating parts that could lacerate human skin. What does that mean? I have no earthly idea, but what it is a technical definition by the FAA that intelligent manufacturers, engineers can use to demonstrate that their drone is a Category 2 eligible drone, the 11 foot-pounds of kinetic energy. So it's just a baseline. Precisely, nobody has built a drone as of April 21 that meets this, but what happens is there is a process called a means of compliance, then an FAA response, which is their declaration of compliance that you are Category 2. The next category is Category 3. It's the same thing that I mentioned for Category 2, except the transfer is not 11 foot-pounds of kinetic energy, it's 25 foot-pounds of kinetic energy. Still, all the exposed rotating parts can't be exposed. It has to be protected. And the FAA accepted means of compliance, declaration of compliance. And what's interesting about this, I feel, is that the FAA is telling manufacturers and people at home building these things what the standards are they must meet. They're not telling them how to do that. That's up to you. So for example, if a manufacturer or you are making a Category 2 drone, to demonstrate compliance, you may have very good shrouds around the rotating propellers. That could be accepted by the FAA. One manufacturer has gone to the FAA and says, hey, can we use software to demonstrate this? In other words, perhaps the drone realizes that it's losing power, or it's going to crash through GPS sensing or whatever, that it would automatically shut down the rotating parts. The FAA goes, sure, that seems like a reasonable approach. Let us know how you're going to implement that. If it's good enough, we will let you do that. Now, the final thing is Category 4 eligible. Nobody watching this video is probably going to be concerned about a Category 4 eligible unmanned aircraft system. These Category 4s are actually going to have airworthiness certificates issued under Part 21 of the FAA regulations, just like if Cessna wanted to produce another aircraft. And because Category 4 are going to have an airworthiness certificate, they are going to have operating limitations in an approved flight manual that has to be sent up to the FAA. And this flight manual will cover everything, night operations, over people, on and on and on. That's major league stuff. The people that are going to be doing, or the organizations that are going to be doing Category 4 drones are UPS, FedEx, Amazon. These are big drones, 50 pounds, who knows what, that are going to go long distances. And when the FAA tells anybody they have to do a flight manual, that includes everything that has to be done to be complied with in that drone. So I don't think any recreational user has to be concerned on that. So those are the 4 categories. You'll probably see those creeping into ads, discussions, and understanding of what it is. And as the manufacturers now have understanding what they have to do, they'll figure out how to do it, get the FAA to approve that, then you go on from there. Again, all these categories are for recreational flyers, for professional flyers under Part 107. Recreational flyers are still governed by the AMA and our Safety Code of Compliance as a community-based organization. The next area we'll talk about is operations at night. Again, this is Part 107 for commercial operators. When the Part 107 was first written in June of 2016, it allowed for night flights, but you had to request a waiver from the FAA for every time you flew at night under Part 107. What has happened now with this update, April 21st, 2021, you are permitted to fly under Part 107 on night operations. You just have to do a update on your Part 107 test that can be done online, which is going to be very easy to do. And in addition, before you fly at night under Part 107, you've taken your test, you have to make sure that your drone or RC model is equipped with anti-collision lights that be seen for 3 statute miles and have a flash rate sufficient to avoid a collision. And the lights have to be on when you fly. So that's a good example of how these Part 107 rules are growing and adapting to make it easier for people to have the full range of their operations. And again, this is a good time to discuss some of the differences between Part 107 and the recreational user, because the question comes up, well, how about at my local AMA club, we're having a night flight event? Is that legal? And the answer is yes. The FAA, just to back up a little bit, has always consistently, with regards to pilots, taken a different view of recreational pilots. You're just flying on your own in your Cessna 172 versus any sort of commercial operation. There's much more attention on commercial operations than recreational operations for pilots. A good example for pilots is age. If you're a recreational pilot, there is no age limit to fly your Cessna. You just have to pass a medical. For commercial pilots, 65 years of old, no matter what your health, you're done flying commercially. So for at night, we've talked about for 107, if you take an online test to be understand of the updated rules, you don't need a waiver from the FAA anymore. And yet, when we look at the AMA safety code for recreational flyers, what happens with this kind of laissez-faire, hands-off approach, night flying is not restricted in the AMA safety code. The 2 things that would apply is I will not fly a model in a careless or reckless manner, and I will maintain visual contact with the RC model aircraft using nothing more than the glasses that I am needed to wear. So for example, if you're flying your RC model at your club field at night with no lights, that could be interpreted as a careless and reckless manner, but you're okay to fly at night with your recreational models, Part 107, with the new compliance of the rules. The next area that was updated with the change to Part 107, again on April 21st, 2021, regards operations over people. This is a little bit complicated. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but just to give you an awareness of what is coming down if under Part 107 you want to fly your drone or RC model aircraft over people. And what happens is the FAA handles this with under the 4 categories of unmanned aircraft that we discussed earlier, categories 1 through 4. Also, it covers the types of people and crowds that you're talking about. And the FAA generally describes it as an open-air assembly of people where there's a lot of people, say at a concert or a sporting event, how those rules are handled, and then flight over moving vehicles, small groups of people, how that is happened. So let's talk about Category 1. Category 1 aircraft that weigh under 8.8 ounces or 0.55 pounds, and the rotating propellers are protected, are allowed sustained flight over open-air assemblies. One catch is for everything that flies over open-air assemblies, categories 1 through 4, you must have remote ID on and working on your drone. I have a separate video on remote ID. I'll put a card up here for that. Remote ID is a way that the FAA can track who is flying the drone. It is being developed by manufacturers as we speak. It may be produced with the drone or a bolt-on capability for the drone. We do not have to comply with remote ID until September of 2023. However, you need remote ID to fly your Category 1 or any category drone over an open-air assembly of people. So again, the FAA is laying the groundwork, the rules for flying over open-air assemblies of people, but you've got to have remote ID. Category 2 aircraft are allowed to fly over open-air assemblies of people. However, you must have a remote ID. And an additional requirement for Category 1, you must have a means of compliance and a declaration of compliance from the FAA on how you're going to do these Category 2 operations over open groups of people. Category 3 aircraft cannot operate over open air assemblies of people, and if you want to fly over smaller groups of people, you can do that if it's in a closed, restricted area and everybody knows that a drone is in the area. And also that this small aircraft, Category 3, does not maintain sustained flight over any human being unless you're directly participating in the operation. Category 4 aircraft, again, is a whole nother operation. Their ability to operate under people would be part of their airworthiness certificate and their FAA-approved flight operations manual. Another addition to this Part 107 update is operations of small unmanned vehicles, your drone or your RC model, over moving vehicles. So Category 1, 2, and 3, you can't sustain the operations over moving vehicles. It's transit operations only. And for these aircraft throughout the operation, you have to be on a closed or restricted site, and everybody in this moving vehicle or involved in the operation must be on notice that there is a small unmanned aircraft flying over them, transiting. And again, no sustained flight over these vehicles, transit operations only. And also, moving vehicles are basically anything that allows a person to go faster than a normal walking pace. It could be in a car, it could be on a skateboard, it could be on a hoverboard, it could be riding a bicycle. That is considered a moving vehicle for the purposes of Part 107. So the next area that has been changed with this update to 107 are the remote pilot knowledge test changes. Now I want to highlight the term remote pilot. You're starting to see this description creeping into the FAA information more and more. So they're identifying the remote pilot is the pilot of the small unmanned aircraft that's flying it. You'll also see from remote pilot the remote pilot in command. Pilot in command is a very important term in the world of the FAA. That means you are responsible for everything that airplane does as the pilot in command. So we're starting to see that understanding from the FAA. But the good news is on the remote pilot changes, first of all, because the FAA has allowed night flying into Part 107 with this change, you have to take a short online test to understand the night flying requirements to operate Part 107 at night. If you've not taken this test, which is available free online, you'll still have to get a waiver for any Part 107 night operations. The other thing that's very nice is when you get your initial Part 107 license, and it is a certificate issued by the FAA, that certificate has to be updated every 24 years. Prior to this rule coming out, you would have to pay money, make an appointment, and take this recurring 24-month Part 107 recurrence test at a FAA designated facility. It was a hassle, it was expensive. The FAA has changed all that now. It is free, and you can do this 24-month recurrent Part 107 testing online. So as the FAA gets further insight, handles on how they're going to work commercial operations on Part 107, the question comes up of inspection of the drone, testing, and demonstration of compliance. In other words, do you have a license? Are you current? Things of that nature. So the FAA has information in this update of April 21st, 2021. A remote pilot in command manipulating the flight controls of this aircraft must have in their possession the pilot certificate with a rating and identification when you're acting as a remote pilot. You must present your remote pilot certificate and identification upon request. Now the FAA, for the first time, is letting drone pilots, RC pilots flying into Part 107 who is authorized to ask to see your license. And it's a lot of people. It is anybody from the FAA, the NTSB, which is the National Transportation Safety Board, the TSA, Transportation Security Administration, or any federal, state, or local law enforcement officer. That's a lot of people. And the reason for this, I believe, is drone operators are flying literally anywhere in the country. They're not restricted to airports. They will interact with a lot more law enforcement people. The FAA will be reaching out to these law enforcement people, what they can do, what they can't do, but now for the first time it's in a regulation. Furthermore, the pilot must make available upon request to the FAA any document, record, or report required to be kept under FAA regulations, things like logs of where you've flown. And then the FAA, if they ask to, are able to test or inspect your drone RC model to make sure that everything's in compliance. For example, that remote ID, when remote ID is required after 2023, they can check to make sure that that is working. And the final part is an update to the 107, the design and production rules for manufacturers. This is detailed information. We don't really need to go in here now in this video for what the manufacturers have to do to be in compliance with these categories, protections, and systems that are being required for safety by the FAA. So thank you for viewing this video. It's important to keep up to date with these Part 107 changes with the FAA. As the FAA gains more knowledge, there'll be more updates in the real world, and they start realizing maybe there's a security and who has access to who's flying the models, there'll be changes. But this is an incremental, step-by-step process. It's laying the foundation. Over open-air assemblies of people, you need remote ID. Well, remote ID has to be created by some manufacturer. So these are just the rules that are steps in the right direction, I think, especially by allowing flight at night and over open-air assemblies of people without a waiver, and especially the recurrent testing online for free. I think that's a good thing. Remember, for recreational flyers, you just go out to your AMA or field and you fly just for your own recreation and pleasure. We're still flying under a community-based organization by the Academy of Model Aeronautics. It's very general. Will not fly an aircraft in a careless or reckless manner. I will not be under the influence of alcohol. I will avoid flying directly over unprotected people, moving vehicles, occupied structures. Again, common sense things, but the important point is the FAA is using the AMA as a contact for the vast number of recreational pilots. More to come on the recreational pilots. We will have a test that we'll have to take, but that is in the future. Everything in this video has been for Part 107, flying your drone for commercial purposes. Thank you very much.